Welcome to the European Parliamentary Research Service podcasts.
In this podcast, we'll talk about the European political priorities for the next half-decade. More specifically, how they're set through the European Council strategic agenda and the Commission's political guidelines. We'll examine what these two key documents focus on, where they converge and where they differ. Stay with us.
Before the start of each new legislative term, the European Council, representing the heads of state or government of all EU countries, as well as its president and that of the European Commission, sets the EU's political priorities for the next 5 years. This document is called the Strategic Agenda, and it is one of the most important treaty-based roles of the European Council.
Taking it into account, the European Commission follows up with the President's political guidelines. These will then be translated into more specific policies and actions in the Commission's annual work programmes, before being submitted to the Parliament and Council in the form of proposals for EU legislation.
So together, they are the backbone of Europe's political vision and plans.
That's right, though they're slightly different in nature. So while the European Council strategic agenda sets the big picture goals without getting into too much detail, the political guidelines include specific initiatives, some even with a concrete timeline, to achieve the macro objectives. So it's a bulkier document.
Although organised differently, both documents agree on 3 core priorities for the EU up to 2029: democracy, security, and competitiveness.
Now, compared with the political priorities of the previous cycle, and owing to recent challenges like the pandemic, the war in Ukraine, and rising global tensions, it's easier to see that democracy and defense have become more prominent, while green growth, climate and energy are less salient than before.
And this leads us to one of the major shifts. External policy now feeds into all policy areas, intertwining with internal policies. While this is more explicit in the strategic agenda, the emphasis on Europe's role in the world runs like a red thread through both documents.
On top of that, sovereignty and economic security are now front and centre. Before, it was mostly about digital sovereignty, but now it's all-encompassing, as we're talking about protecting Europe's interests across strategic sectors such as defence, energy, food, and economic policy more broadly.
Democracy was, and still is, a priority in the Commission's political guidelines. But now it also figures for the first time in the strategic agenda. So the message is clear. Democracy isn't just a European value. It's something the EU is committed to actively defending.
Speaking of shifts, and as a result of the pandemic, health is now a bigger focus. The Commission even talks about launching a cybersecurity action plan to protect hospitals.
As for migration and internal security, both documents look at these priorities from a wider perspective, as is the case with resilience and preparedness, which now include angles linked to democracy, trade, security, and defence.
A striking difference between the two documents is that the Commission's political guidelines pay much more attention to social and employment issues than the strategic agenda. Conversely, external policies and climate and energy feature much more prominently in the European Council strategic agenda. And there are more specific policy differences. Here's Ralf Drachenberg from the European Parliamentary Research Service.
One example where the two documents convey different messages on the same topic is foreign direct investment. While the strategic agenda stresses the need to attract foreign investment, the political guidelines is a lot more cautious, outlining their potential risks. Moreover, it's not only important what is in the document, but also what is missing. While a reference to entrepreneurship is absent from the Commission's guidelines, the strategic agenda mentions neither asylum nor citizens' participation.
Because the Commission's political guidelines have a more operational nature, they tend to come with specific initiatives and actual timelines. Around 65 have been outlined in the current political guidelines.
So within the first 100 days, we might see a clean industrial deal and a white paper on the future of European defence. And by 2025, there could be a new European Biotech Act, a new pact for social dialogue, and a new long-term EU budget.
And these are not just promises. Over the next months and years, the European Commission will translate the political priorities outlined in these two strategic documents into concrete actions and law proposals that will need to be discussed and approved by the European Parliament and the Council.
Want to know more? Check out the full briefing by Ralf Drachenberg on the EPRS website or in our app.
This is a European Parliamentary Research Service podcast.
Thanks for listening.